As I said, we have a softer side to our heart, which we use, which we sort of believe in. And so I'll give you an example. In COVID, what happened was everybody was cutting down salaries and so on and so forth. Everybody, was taking pay cuts. We told our employees that there won't be any retrenchments, and we also told our employees that there won't be any pay cut. uh, People didn't believe us. So we had to do a town hall every week to tell people that our stance hasn't changed. We also did a town hall with our investors every 2 weeks just to appraise them on the situation on the ground. At the same time, I heard about this restaurant in Mumbai which was potentially shutting down. It's an iconic restaurant in Mumbai. It's called Mirchi and Mine. Basically, it employs speech and hearing impaired people who serve you at that restaurant. And given that restaurants were shut for a long period of time, it was probably hard for the founders to sustain it. So I reached out to the founder and I said, can you help me recruit speech and hearing impaired people for our warehouse and our offices? To be honest with you, I wanted to start a small experiment of seeing how we could be good to the community and at the same time be a win-win situation for Purplle. And so I requested him, can I recruit like 3 or 4 or 5 people and see how it plays out? What he advised me was, Manish, at least recruit 25 people so that these people are not a big minority in your office or warehouse and they have a community of their own. And, the day we recruited them, it was pretty surreal. We had a trainer who came to train us on how to deal with people who are speech and hearing impaired. But they have a special language called sign language, that's their special asset. And so we learned sign language, on how to operate with these people. What we saw on that day was their parents came to drop them at our fulfillment center. And this has never happened. When you recruit employees, your parents don't show up to sort of, make sure that the kid joins at the right place. I think maybe they were just surprised by the fair salaries that these people were getting, and they were a little worried as to whether we were doing the right things or not. And so I think these are the fundamental pieces of Purple's culture. I think it'll be transparency, it'll be ownership, and I would say it's heart of gold. Like, I think we've just ensured that we don't act in the short term, we act in the long term. I think those are value principles of Purple that we continue to live by from a culture point of view.
Hi everyone. Before we begin, I would like to share that this podcast is brought to you by Prime Venture Partners, an early stage VC fund led by Amit Somani, Shripati Acharya, and Sanjay Swami. Prime is often the first institutional investor in category defining tech startups in fintech, SaaS, healthcare, and education, such as MyGate, Quizzes, Planet Spark, Bolt, and Clip. To know more about Prime, visit primevp.in.
Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia. Welcome to 100x Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I have with me Manish Taneja, co-founder and CEO of Purplle. Purplle is India's second largest beauty destination. In today's podcast, we'll discuss about how do you create a company for a decade and then continue it also after a decade. Manish's journey and his co-founder's journey has been nothing short of inspiring. They have almost run like back to bone in terms of cash many times in their journey, but they kept on going. Manish shares, as in our conversations, that the camaraderie between the co-founders kept it going. Right, they respected each other a lot, and they couldn't see each other fail. So I believe that is one factor that kept Purplle going and made it what it is. Purplle, for its initial 5-6 years of its journey, was almost not known, and today is the second largest beauty destination after Nika. Purplle has a very unique uh, market where it serves the middle India in terms of beauty needs. It almost covers almost each and every zip code, including the likes of Leh Ladakh, northeast of India. And today, Purplle is a 1,200 crore revenue company valued at $1.1 billion. Manish's journey has been through many rocks and bottoms, but today, what Purplle is today is a institution in itself which we all could learn from. So, Manish, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Siddharth, and happy to be here.
Manish, would love to learn from you your journey before Purple because you started another venture and it couldn't work out. So, what made you start a venture in beauty segment when online beauty was not a known market? How did you
Yes.
went and you know s- uh, uh, did maths on this market since you had been in finance background? So it was not a
Yes.
emotion that you wanted to pursue. It was
Sure. 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 You know, so as far as I can remember, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Whether this was in college, I went to college at IIT Delhi. I studied electrical engineering, parts of microwave technology, and there weren't too many microwave companies in India to intern at. So I one day thought, maybe I'll set up a microwave company that students at IIT could intern at. I think I was naive in those days. I joined. I graduated from IIT Delhi in 2007 and joined financial services world. I used to work at Avendus Capital and continue to have great friends there. Um, I also worked at briefly at Fidelity's private equity arm. It was called Fidelity Growth Partners India in those days. Um, I think between Avendus and Fidelity, I tried to start a company with a couple of co-founders. It was called mynextcompany.com, which continues to be my Twitter handle. Um, but I think post a couple of months, some people had cold feet, and they had other pressures, and so I moved back to Bombay and joined Fidelity Private Equity. Again, at Fidelity, I learned the art of investing. Especially I would say being very sane, calm about investments, and not being driven by today's trends. I think Fidelity is a great institution that taught me a lot. It has great HR practices, which I learned from. And so before we started Purple, we are actually, just for introduction, we are three co-founders, Rahul, Suyash, and I. Rahul, Suyash, and I all met serendipitously. We were introduced through some common people. Rahul and I decided to stay together in Mumbai in a same flat. And so, post typically coming back from office, we would discuss what next to do with our lives. And luckily, entrepreneurship was high on agenda for both of us, and so it kind of worked really well. And so I'll tell you, how did we decide on beauty as a space? We were very clear that we wanted to do something in the internet space, given that internet was exploding in 2010, 11, 12, and so on and so forth. um, I have two hostel of mates of mine from IIT who have turned out to be brilliant entrepreneurs in the internet space. One of them is Binny Bansal. He was 1 year senior to me from the same hostel and absolutely an inspiration for all of us. The second one, who also turned entrepreneur much earlier than I did, was one of Zomato's ex co founders, Pankaj Chadda. He used to be my junior at the same hostel. And so when I used to talk to these people, I used to feel like, wow, there's some growth happening month on month, which I wasn't used to seeing in other industries. And I used to feel like something fundamentally is shifting here, and I didn't want to miss the bus. And so doing something with internet was very clear. We had two categories that we had in mind, which we thought we could go after, which had less competition. One of them was furniture. The other one was beauty. We chose beauty. It was a process of rejection, in my view. I think furniture needed a lot of initial capital to start with, so we didn't end up starting furniture. Later, we realized that Pepperfry and Urban Ladder entered that category in two very different ways. And so we decided to get into beauty space because we realized there were lots of unmet needs of consumers. It's a large category, will become an even larger category as our per capita GDP goes up. It has got exceptionally high gross margins, and therefore unit economics is easy to make work in this category. And then, third, it has good repeat business. So, once you acquire a customer, you keep getting the customer for over and over again. And in order to do our diligence, we did a proper private equity style primary diligence. Uh, Rahul and I used to visit stores in and around Mumbai. We visited all kinds of stores. We visited wholesale stores that sold beauty in Crawford Market in Mumbai. It's similar to what Sadar Bazaar is in Delhi. We used to visit single brand stores like Body Shops of the world. We used to visit multi brand stores like department stores and other stores. And we also visited the Chudi Bindi kind of stores. These are general stores that sell all kinds of stuff. We were 27 then. We used to appear like students and visit these stores and do our surveys before we decided to jump in. But I'm glad we did this primary diligence, before jumping in. So that's sort of the story behind Purple.
Got it. What were the initial challenges? Because nobody believed in vertical e-commerce as a market in 2011. Everybody was
Yes.
going after horizontal e-commerce.
Yes. So I think the primary challenges were two. One is convincing others, that there is a market to be made here. And when I say others, it means telling future employees that vertical commerce could be a good place to be. It also meant telling suppliers like brands, like FMCG companies, telling them that they should create a specific sales team that focuses on e-commerce as a channel, and at the same time convincing investors to invest in this space because we believed this would do well. And I think second piece of convincing was needed for our own self. Like, I mean, the three of us were not any different from anybody else, so we had to convince ourselves that this there is something to be built here. And because we were putting our lives into it. And so I think these were the broadly the two challenges. I think one is convincing other stakeholders and second is convincing ourselves. I would also tell you that 2011 was a very different world from the world we live in today. There was no UPI. Getting payment gateway integrated used to be a 30-day process. It was not plug and play that you can do today. You had to get documents signed with every bank whose net banking you needed to accept. So it was a very different world. I mean, I don't think we even remember that world anymore. um, People using internet for shopping were very few. And I think those were the early challenges of sort of setting up Purple.
And can you describe the initial, like, first 5 to 6 years of Purple? How big the team grew? What kind of business was it? And you know, I think in the first 5 to 6 years, you ran out of cash multiple times. So how did you keep on going during those
Yeah.
times?
So I would say, I think first 3 years, we were just learning the ropes of the business. Just learning to be a better retailer, online retailer at of beauty. Um, we were also learning how to build technology for scale. We were also learning how to run warehousing at scale without messing up on our consumers' orders. And delivery experience in those days also used to be not very good, and we were always dependent on third party courier companies to come to deliver our orders. um, I think it was just learning the ropes of the business. I think those were very fundamental years of building Purple. Given that we did not have access to a lot of cash, from the start, we chose to, and I think this is also true because of our backgrounds. I worked at Fidelity. We are a very value investor. We're also very sort of, I would say, under the radar kind of company. We don't tom our accomplishments very, very often. Fidelity is run out of Boston in US, not out of New York. And there's a reason for this. And likewise, Rahul used to work at Tata Group. And again, a very value centric company, company that will build value over decades, not necessarily over years. So, the fundamental thing that all three of us agreed on was we will build for growth, but we will also build it profitably. And that was always the essence of the sort of way we ran our company. And so we've never made huge losses. I mean, I think compared to the capital in the bank, we've always been very close to profitability, if at all. I think that was the first fundamental way of building the business. Look, what still did happen was that sometimes capital was very late to come, and so we were running out of capital. We've had our instances of term sheets being pulled out because maybe a competitor got funded at the same time, and so on and so forth. So this happened in 2014 second half. Uh, what happened was we had a term sheet that was withdrawn, and our competitor got funded, and I think those 6 months are very unforgettable. Rahul and I would typically wake up every morning and see a negative cash balance in the bank account, and either one of us will put some money into the company that morning so that all our checks could get encashed. I think I'm also very grateful to our employees who stayed with us during that period, because many a times their salaries got delayed, and some of them had EMIs to pay for, and so on and so forth. And I think that gave us very loyal group of employees who still continue to be with the firm even now. And third, I would say I'm very grateful to some of our investors who helped us out in that time, sometimes putting money into the firm in a very drip feeding manner. Whenever I needed it, I would get money in like 1 or 2 days. This was small money, it was 20, 30 lakhs, but every 20, 30 lakhs mattered at that point in time. And sometimes I would borrow money personally and sort of take care of the payables. But that's how we carried on the company till the end of 2014. January 2015 is when we raised our Series A from Ivy Cap Ventures. Out of a 15 crore round, they put 10 crores in Jan. There was a tranching of the thing. And I think we had a very similar thing in 2017 post demonetization. I think we had about 50 lakhs in the bank account. 50 lakhs is a very small amount of money when you're running an e-commerce company, because you also have intra-month fluctuations of cash flows. Um, I think a funny question to ask is what kept us going. And in my view, I think there is extremely high camaraderie between the founders. If one of us is feeling low, the other two are on the high, and they feel something nice is going to happen tomorrow, and so we show up to work. As I said, some of our investors have been outstanding. They've helped us out whenever we needed their help. And I think I'm grateful to our employees and our families who've sort of stayed put with us, in those years when we didn't make much money, or, when we couldn't raise capital, or when we couldn't grow, and so on and so forth.
So, can you share your fundraising journey from the beginning till now?
Uh, I think our fundraising journey has been of, I would say there are two characteristics that define it. The first one is, build relationships with people when you don't need them, and so um, I think my first set of capital came from people who I had worked with, and when I was deciding to start on my own, these people chipped in with their own personal money. um, Bloom came in 2013, and I had known Bloom when Bloom was raising its first round. When I used to work at Fidelity, they had pitched to us as to be their LPs, and so I knew Sanjay and Karthik from those days. Mumbai Angels, Chennai Angels, they chipped in with some money in 2013. Then we raised our first Series A institutional round in 2015 from Ivy Cap Ventures. Luckily, Ivy Cap also exited that round in 2021 for about 330 crores. So they made about 22x of their investment. Ivy Cap Fund 1 was about 240 odd crores. So we returned much more than the fund size itself, although we got only 15 crores from that fund. Um, then in 2016, we raised $1 million from JSW Ventures. It's kind of different because these were not large rounds. I think they kept the company going. But this was not enough capital to deploy a lot of money into long term projects. And so, as I said, we had to balance short term versus long term really well, because we never had access to a lot of capital. Our first round of large institutional funding happened in late 2020, which is when Goldman Sachs and Verlinvest invested in us. There was about $35 million. And then last year, we raised about $110 million, about 800 odd crores from Premji Invest and Kedara Capital. So that's been our fundraising journey so far.
Got
But
it.
I would say, almost 95% of the capital has been raised in the last 2 years.
Wow. So that's real compounding at work, right? You just kept on going and going, right? And if some of these investors would have taken out their money like 2 years before, they would have been seriously regretting. Ivy
You know, I
caps.
think I think the IRR on investors has been like on the earlier investors, including Ivy Cap, has been closer to 75-80%, which I think is very good. Um, I think if we can deliver a 35-40% IRR to our later stage investors, also, I think it will be wonderful, given the amount of capital they deploy. So, I think, we are looking at growing the firm at closer to 35 to 40% over the next 5 to 10 years, and potentially go public in like 3 to 4 years from now. And obviously, this will do. I think one of the other things, because of my background in financial services, I've understood this really well is raising capital is a founder's responsibility, and also arranging exit is a founder's responsibility too, because people who are putting money into our companies, they also raise money from other LPs, and they also have back-to-back arrangements with those LPs. So it's really important that we understand this and we plan for this, maybe 2 years in advance whenever somebody needs exit. So I have very open conversations with our investors and ask them, when do they need exit? Don't come to me, when you need it in 3 months. But tell me, 1 2 year in advance, so that one can plan for it, and it's just easier to execute it that way versus sort of doing it in the short term.
Dear listeners, before we dive further into the podcast, I would like to welcome Prashant Kanti, Head of Product Management at Zoho Payroll and Zoho Books. Prashant, what does Zoho Payroll do and what is the story behind it?
Zoho Payroll is a payroll solution from the Zoho suite of products. It's designed from the ground up to completely abstract the payroll complexity and put your payroll compliance on autopilot mode. So, what do I mean by this? So, when we talk about abstracting payroll complexity, we mean that a business needs to know just who their employees are, where they work, and how much they get paid. And on putting your payroll compliance on autopilot mode, what we mean is there are ever changing rules and regulations that affect your payroll. And Zoho Payroll takes care of all those things. Business need not worry about all those things.
Thank you, Prashant. Dear listeners, you will find more about Zoho Payroll in the show notes. Now, let's further continue with the podcast. One more thing that kept you going, right? You shared in our offline conversation that one gentleman, Gaurav Deepak, shared with you that India is growing 8% year on year. Just
Yes.
stay alive,
This was
survive.
Kaushal. This was Kaushal at Avendus. Yes. Yes. So look, I think lots of good learnings from people I've worked with over the years, and um, um, when I was leaving Avendus Capital, in one of those exit conversations with Kaushal, he mentioned to me that, Manish, whatever happens to your startup, just make sure that you survive. Because in this country, which is going to grow at 8%, if you're just better than average, you probably will grow at 20%. And 20% compounded over 20 years will mean huge sums of value created. So just make sure that you never sort of run out of cash fully, and you never have to shut down the company. I did see that in them when we went through financial crisis in 2008 and 9, and deals were very few and far to come by. I think Avendus survived, and obviously not just survived but thrived after that. So it was something to learn from Kaushal, that I'm really thankful to him for having taught me that lesson.
What changed in the second half of the company from 2017 to 2021 that you are today, right?
I think 2016, 17 were very formative years for the firm, although we had very little cash. I think we kept investing in our technology stack. And that technology stack is what I call as our beauty intelligence suite. Think of it like as how a human brain processes information around beauty. Likewise, using machine learning, the computer understands everything in the world of beauty from a supply and demand side point of view. This essentially tells us what products to launch, which can potentially become successful in India. Um, and so, when we were when we were almost about to run out of cash in 2017, we tried to monetize this data. One of our investors had always worked at a data company, all his life, and so he sort of inspired us to say, data is monetizable, and you should do it. We tried to monetize it, but we were running out of time, and it was hard to convince large FMCG companies to use our data when they had the likes of Nielsen's and many other large data companies to use their data from. We also realized that we weren't very confident in selling our own data because we didn't know whether it will work for people or not. And so the fruit of the pudding is in the eating of it. We decided to use that data to create our own brands. So 2017 October November timeframe, we decided to sort of use our data to create our own products. It was actually product first approach more than a brand first approach, because our data used to suggest products that we should make. And ever since then, our own brand started doing really well. We've never looked back. So that's the second part of our journey, where we've used data to create our own brands. We can spot very very early, I would say, trends in keywords that we think might do really well in future, and we can invest in those products very early on, and create products that do really well for. So one of the earliest trends we identified in India way back in early 2018 was toners. We invested in toners as a category, and today we do exceptionally well at. We were noticing that serums were starting to become slight. They were starting to show that uptick in Google search volume, also on Purple's search volume, and so we invested in serums. Today we do really well there. And so likewise, I think the second half of the journey has been believing in yourself, doing things that are contradictory to the world, but at the same time, we think could create massive value in future. And that's something that we've been doing, ever since 2017. One of the other things that has happened in our second half of journey has been, we've been very selectively but opportunistically acquisitive. So in 2017, we hired an entrepreneur who ended up building our entire private brands business. He ended up creating a lot of value for the firm and also for himself. In 2020, we decided to venture into the feminine hygiene space. We acquired a brand called Carmezy. Those founders have done exceptionally well and continue to work with us. Both these were still smaller sort of acquisitions. Then in December 2021, early Jan 2022, we acquired Faces Canada. It's probably India's top 4 or 5 makeup brands, north of 300 crores of revenue, about 11-1200 people. And so that was a big acquisition for us, and we had to really navigate the people issues there. But I think we've done an exceptionally well job there. No jobs have been lost, and today we have integrated the entire company with Purple. Yeah, so look, that's been the second part of our story, probably.
Yeah. And the other part is that you launched your own brands, right? With 65% gross margins. I think that also changed the narrative of the company, where just being from the marketplace, you became a proper, comparable to the likes of P&G and Unilever
Yes.
in
Yes.
the beauty segment.
Yes, you're right. You're right. So, I think there are three benefits of doing our own brands. I think the first benefit is, if actually your products have a massive value prop, then it helps you acquire customers at a much cheaper CAC. Because if you are selling what everybody else is selling, then your CAC can't be too cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were able to acquire lot more customers when we launched our own brands than when then we were able to acquire if we didn't have anything exclusive to the platform. The second thing it does is, because these products are exclusively available on Purple, um, they also lend to more repeat for the platform. And third, Of course, because these are your own brands, you end up making much higher gross margins on them than you make on third party brands. But I would say the third point will only happen if the first and second happen. If not too many people want to buy it, then you won't be able to realize that gross margins. If not too many people are repeating for your products, then again you won't, then that CAC won't matter, because if that CAC is just one time purchase by a customer, then that also won't happen. I think as builders we are very focused on product quality. We are just exceptionally focused on service levels and product quality. I think that's the DNA of the firm. I'll give you an example. Today, our delivery NPS is north of 75. Yeah. I've heard many other founders tell me that, there are two companies which have exceptionally high quality delivery service in India. One of them is Amazon. The second one, their name is us. And I don't know why, because we don't own our own logistics arm. I mean, we've been able to manage this with storing inventory at the right places, having the right practices, and taking some calls, which helps us deliver really fast. So in most metros, we deliver in a few hours. Um, in all other cities, we deliver as fast as we can, and so service levels have been of high focus area for the firm, and likewise, product quality has been very high focus area for the firm. We would never shortchange any customer for poor product quality.
Manish, one other interesting question that I have is, how have you evolved as a founder during the journey?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and it's a hard one to answer also. But I think I would say I I would say one of the biggest changes in me has been, I'm a lot more calm now than I was earlier. I used to lose patience much earlier, in the early years of Purple. I used to feel like everyone should be as quick at doing things as I am. And I think that's an unfair expectation to have. I also used to think that everybody should work as hard as entrepreneurs do. And I think that's also an unfair expectation to have. I think I'm now much calmer, and I'm also. I think the second way I'm different today versus what I was maybe a few years ago is today. We plan for 2 3 years in advance. Today we don't plan for this month and next month and so on and so forth. So I think long term thinking is a big moat, and I think if people are able to do this, and if people are able to operationalize their long term thinking, I think that's of big advantage to people. And in third way, I would say, the way sort of I'm different today versus the way I was probably 6 7 years ago is, from a doer and a solo performer. Today we are in charge of leading a 2,500 people sort of team, and aligning with everyone, making sure that everybody is aligned, making sure that everybody will get their part of the job done is actually very important. Versus in our early days when the three of us could just do things, um, and alignment was much easier. I think today the alignment is much harder, and so we've taken use of tools. We use OKR tool for managing alignment within the firm. Um, but yeah, I think those are the three big changes in myself that I have noticed over a period of time.
And how has the culture of Purple shaped over the years?
Yeah, I think what's unique about Purple's culture, and look, I'm not very privy to many other cultures, so it's hard for me to comment on how are we different. But I do think our culture is of high transparency. We do try and tell everyone what's the real value of being here. We share ESOPs in a very open and transparent manner. So even if you never asked for it as part of your document, you'll get certain ESOPs on top of your salary. We believe wealth creation is a very important element of any startup, and therefore as many people can benefit should benefit from this. And therefore there is generally high ownership in the people around their work, because, like, I would say out of maybe 600 people who work in our offices, about 200, maybe 150 of them actually have ESOPs, and these are significant value ESOPs. There are also people, Siddharth, I would mention, who who have been at the firm, who are blue collared workers. They help clean the office, they're janitors, and so on and so forth. All of them actually have ESOPs within the firm. They don't know what they're sitting on. They've signed a document, but hopefully, they will have some windfall gains at some point in time in the next 3 or 4 years, which will dramatically change the trajectory of their family, which today they are not in a position to. I think, we also have maybe a softer heart than most companies have. So we've never let go of people. There have been never any retrenchments at Purple. We never, even if we close down a business unit, we absorb those people in our other businesses. We have never asked anybody to go just because we were shutting some part of the business and so on and so forth. That sort of has probably helped us in recruiting talent because people know it's a much safer place to be than probably some of the other companies are. I think two big inspiration in those areas have been Unilever and Tata Group, which we are very deeply inspired by. I think, as I said, we have a softer side to our heart, which we use, which we sort of believe in. And so, I'll give you an example. In COVID, what happened was everybody was cutting down salaries and so on and so forth. Everybody, was taking pay cuts. We told our employees that there won't be any retrenchments, and we also told our employees that there won't be any pay cut. uh, People didn't believe us. So we had to do a town hall every week to tell people that our stance hasn't changed. We also did a town hall with our investors every 2 weeks just to appraise them on the situation on the ground. At the same time, I heard about this restaurant in Mumbai which was potentially shutting down. It's an iconic restaurant in Mumbai. It's called Mirchi and Mime. Basically, it employs speech and hearing impaired people who serve you at that restaurant. And given that restaurants were shut for a long period of time, it was probably hard for the founders to sustain it. So I reached out to the founder and I said, can you help me recruit speech and hearing impaired people for our warehouse and our offices? To be honest with you, I wanted to start a small experiment of seeing how we could be good to the community and at the same time be a win-win situation for Purple. And so I requested him, can I recruit like 3 or 4 or 5 people and see how it plays out? What he advised me was, Manish, at least recruit 25 people so that these people are not a big minority in your office or warehouse and they have a community of their own. And, the day we recruited them, it was pretty surreal. We had a trainer who came to train us on how to deal with people who are speech and hearing impaired. But they have a special language called sign language. That's their special asset. And so we learned sign language, on how to operate with these people. What we saw on that day was their parents came to drop them at our fulfillment center. And this has never happened. When you recruit employees, your parents don't show up to sort of, make sure that the kid joins at the right place. I think maybe they were just surprised by the fair salaries that these people were getting, and they were a little worried as to whether we were doing the right things or not. And um, and so I think these are the fundamental pieces of Purple's culture. I think it'll be transparency, it'll be ownership, and I would say it's heart of gold. Like, I think we've just ensured that we don't act in the short term, we act in the long term. I think those are value principles of Purple that we continue to live by from a culture point of view.
Got it. And Nika today is 3.5 times of that of Purple, right? They are at 4,000 crores yearly revenue. You are at 1,200 crores yearly revenue. So almost during your last part of your journey, you would have been compared to Nika. But in your customer's eyes and similarly in the ecosystem eyes, what helped you establish a moat, and what was that moat?
Honestly, I think a lot of this plays in our own heads. This doesn't play in the heads of a consumer. So I'll give you an example. Every week in August, I was actually meeting consumers at their homes. Some of them were Purple consumers, some of them were non-Purple consumers. Um, I don't think competition amongst platforms plays as much a role in their lives. They don't care where they shop from. As long as they get the right service and as long as they get the right product that they want, this is what they play for. Yeah. Some consumers who are ardent followers of Purplle would love Purplle to open a store in their area also. But I don't think, I think competition plays more in our heads as founders and management teams than it plays in the heads of a consumer. Consumers, are not as wedded to this category like, probably we are. I think to your second part of the question, so the way we differentiated in the eyes of consumers was we focused on a dramatically different consumer. We focused on the middle class of India, somebody who could probably spend 700-800 rupees every time she shopped for her beauty needs. Somebody who wanted to look really nice but couldn't afford to pay a bomb for it. And I'll give you an example. This was way back, I think, 3 years ago when we had launched our serums in our own brand. And I went and met this person. She used to live in Bandra East. When we met her, she started crying. And this was a little awkward, but we asked her, what happened. She said, because of you guys, now I'm able to use products that otherwise I thought only very, very rich people could afford. Yeah. And I thought that was a brilliant move on part of the firm to make products more and more affordable by reducing our cost of manufacturing. So I think we focused fundamentally on a very different consumer. We focused on the middle India, and that's been our forte. It also comes from the fact that all the three founders have lived our lives. We come from tier two cities. We understand these consumers much better than we understand the creme de la creme top end consumer. I think the second part of our differentiation has been, instead of just selling what everybody else sells, we have created our own products and brands on the back of data. And every time we have skipped this process, we have failed a little bit. Every time we've followed this process, we've done really well. So I think just believing in your own process and building your own products for differentiation has really helped us, attract investors' capital, and that's a clear moat within the firm. So I think there are three pieces of moat. Two of them are less visible, but I think are important. First one is our service levels. We are exceptionally high on service levels. Second one is building technology stack, which powers our third moat, which is our own brands business. So those are the three sort of moats that we have built over a period of time.
And once you had built these modes, right, it was very clear in investors' eye that this is like an infinite sort of category. So for you to say, become a multi-billionaire dollar company, which would create a very large outcome for them, that was quite much the possibility.
Yes, yes. Although we still had to execute on our promise, I think the job is not done yet. I think there is an opportunity to build a 20-30 billion dollar company out of India in terms of value. And, Unilever is valued at probably $70 billion in India. So I think there is definitely an opportunity to build a 20-30 billion dollar enterprise over the next 10-15 years.
Got it. So by that you mean like a company worth like $4 to $5 billion in annual revenue,
Yes, 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 yes.
almost like almost today you are at 100
We are at about $150 million. Yeah.
$50 million, right? Almost.
Yeah.
Uh,
But large brand companies with high gross margins and high EBITDA margins typically trade at around 10 times revenue. And I wouldn't call it at 10 times revenue. I would say they just trade at 50, 60 times profits. So if you're able to demonstrate like 15, 17% PAT, then I think you will be valued at like 10x of revenue, which is what happens with Unilever. So I think their revenues would be closer to 50,000 crores and their market cap would be closer to 5 lakh crores. I think most good FMCG companies in India trade at about 10x. So yeah, if you have to get to like $20 billion of market cap, you have to be a great company with about $2.5 billion of revenue, and I think that's quite possible in India.
God. And that's what your true mission statement to yourself is.
Yeah, look, that's what we are building for. I think we are here for another 20, 25 years or so. All of us are 37, 38 years old. And we would like to have a great management team whenever we leave the firm from active capacity. We have great internal talent. We focus a lot on moving people internally and training them so that they can be groomed into multiple roles within the firm. The first port of action whenever we want to recruit anybody is, can we do this internally versus externally? If we can't do it internally, only then do we go out externally. We are very patient. We train people for 3 months, 6 months on the trot before we actually move them into roles. So that's sort of the good practices of building a large, enduring firm, is something we are sort of now starting to imbibe. And if we are able to execute on this well, I think this should be a good company, and a value creating one for a lot of people.
One thing which came clearly from our conversation is that you and your co-founders think really long term, right? And that shows that how you have grown the company, right? It took like initial good 5, 6 years, 7 years to build just the base of the company,
Yes.
when the world never knew of it. And then the compounding really started happening in the last 2 years. And you also said, right, 95% of the money you raised happened in the last 2 years.
Yes.
So, so how didn't you succumb to external pressures of growth?
Yeah. That's a good point. I think there are some fundamental beliefs that we as founders have, which we have sort of lived up to. I think first 7, 8 years of our life, we never spoke to media. Uh, we don't think we should come out and say something that we will not be able to honor after many years, of saying that thing. It's very, very attractive to sort of speak to media and make sure that there is PR around the firm. I think we just wanted to stay away from it. Second, none of us consume media. So we've had I think media induces a lot of competition and envy. I think envy is a very bad feeling for anybody to have, not just founders. And so, it's a feeling which doesn't benefit anyone. At the end of the day, you are envy of someone, but you can't achieve what they have achieved. And you are no better even if you feel envious about someone, because you are in the same state as where you were, probably worse off today. So I think the way to avoid external pressure is, just reduce the amount of sort of distractions these things have in your life. For us, that's been avoiding media for a long period of time. I don't read newspaper. I've not read newspapers for like 10 years now. We hardly consume any content online unless there are really good podcasts where founders share a lot of learnings. And I think being away from mainstream media has been very helpful. And I think it was a call. I don't think it came naturally to us. It was a call we took at that point of time, very early on in our life, saying, we will not be there consuming media or be in the media, because we just didn't think we had done really well in our lives, and we just didn't think we would be able to honor our words if we said something today. So we were just scared of being in the media. I mean, I'm just being very honest to you. And so we continue to be there on media very sparsely even today. Not too many people know about us. Uh, I think the investor community knows about us. I think our consumers know about us. This is broadly what matters. Everybody else who doesn't know about us, it's okay. We don't need to be a household name in everybody's eyes. Maybe when we go IPO, we not lot more people will know about us, uh, but yeah, look, that's been the journey. We've been any regular, middle class boys building a company. Um, Given that we didn't know how to handle a lot of these things, we just stayed away from it.
And share some things that you would have done sooner in Purple's journey.
I think one of the fundamental things that a B2C company typically misses, I think a B2B companies are better at it, because every customer is important and the founder actually spends time with those customers. What ends up happening in a B2C company, and that too online, is that you never meet your customers. And I wish we had done this a lot more earlier than what we do than when we started doing it. To give you an example, sitting out of sort of glass buildings, we have a very different perception of our customers. What our customers really need. And I think meeting them, reading between the lines, is something that I would really change about my own past. I wish I had done that more in 2013, 14, 15. I've done it, but I've done it sparsely. I do it now very rigorously, but I wish I had done that a lot more earlier, and I would have probably gained a lot more insights into what kind of services or products to offer to our customers that could be valuable to them and could make money for us. I think that's one thing that I would change about our past. Especially, this is 2013, 14, 15, 16 years. This is what I would sort of change. After that, I've done this pretty regularly. Maybe, one more thing I would say as a company that somebody should focus on I mean, an advice I would give to a younger myself would be focus on differentiation much more than being slightly better than others. I think slightly better than others doesn't work. Consumers won't shift to you. You have to be fundamentally very different from other sort of avenues where consumers can shop at, so that I mean, that's the only thing that moves consumers to your platform. I think just being incrementally better than others doesn't work. Consumers have inertia and they won't shift. So that's another piece of advice I would give to a younger myself.
Can you share an example for that from Purple?
I look at this thing as an example. When everybody else was selling similar products, we ended up building our own brands, but that happened way late in our journey in 2017. I mean, we shouldn't have waited for 6 years to do it. We should have done this in the first 2 3 years had we spoken to our consumers, right? Sometimes timing is not right. Sometimes there are other things that are beyond your control, but I would say just fundamentally, do things different rather than doing better than others. I think better than others is not a very successful way of building business. I think fundamentally being very different to a set of audiences, potentially creating a monopoly in their eyes, is probably more important than being incrementally better than others.
Correct. But building your own brand, right? Uh, Recently, everybody has been starting to doing it, right? Believe you were like early in that. Uh, some more
Yes.
examples of like how did you say that we don't want to compare ourselves to other, but we want to be different.
Yeah. I think second one was very simple one. If you look at it, today all of us are, I would say, upper middle class, but not building for this consumer was a very conscious choice that we took. We started building for middle India because we realized that nobody was building for them. And no point competing with someone when there are open spaces everywhere else to make money. So, that's what I'm saying. I think don't fall into your comfort zone. Build things that, people are not building. Build things for consumers that others are not building for. It's hard sometimes to build it that way, but at least there's a chance of success at the end. If you're getting into a very competitive space in a very competitive consumer mind, I think you'll find it hard to succeed. So I think those are two examples that I can think of.
Thanks a lot, Manish. I really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot from our conversation.
Wonderful. And, hopefully, if this is useful to some people, I would also consider this wonderful. So, thank you so much, Siddharth, for having me. It's a pleasure talking to you.